Hi, Capricorn. Welcome to your July 2020 Astro Alchemy. It's Arena here. So this is for Capricorn Sun and Capricorn Rising. Last month I began calling my readings Astro Alchemy just to give that sense that people have the ability to co-create the life that they want. And even though we don't control everything in the outside world, there are things that we can do, and we can use astrology and other divinatory tools to achieve those aims. What happens sometimes is that people give away their power to these tools, and that's when it goes and becomes something that actually can hinder progress rather than help it along. So in July, it's like you have these triggers because you're the opposite sign of Cancer, and the sun is in that seventh house of committed partnership along with Mercury retrograde. So some of you have had issues come up with a partner. I don't think that it's necessarily bad, though, because you are going to have Mercury go direct here. So any kind of communication that you have with a partner, even if it's going over old territory, can ultimately lead to more understanding. And that's what it's all about. Sometimes when a person, especially if it's a long-term relationship, there can be misunderstandings that never get quite aired out, hashed out. So this may be something that was a misunderstanding, and the misunderstanding could have actually occurred when Mercury went retrograde. But even that type of misunderstanding may have come after a long period of other such situations occurring that were never really identified and dealt with. And so this may be a time for you to regain that sense of everything being restored and understood. The sun can be a positive influence in the seventh house, especially when you have a retrograding planet there. Now, speaking of retrogrades, as the month begins, actually on the first of the month, Saturn goes back into your sign. So you've had Saturn in that sign, in your own sign, from December of 2017 until March of 2020. And then it went into Aquarius for a few months. Actually, just a couple of months before it started retrograding. Now it's back into Capricorn. And it will remain here until the end of the year, if I'm not mistaken, when it goes back right around the time, right before the winter solstice. And I think we're going to have a lot of amazing experiences at the end of this year because of this. I'm trying to locate here if that is true, because I believe let's see. Yes, it's going back on the 17th. So that is very exciting. Yeah, there must be something with Saturn, Jupiter, and or is it just Saturn and Jupiter? They're both in Aquarius around the same time. The Aquarian age. Okay, so that is happening, and the first house is the house of the self. So when Saturn is in your own house, you may be working on yourself in some way. The first house can be the body. So for some people, this is a time when they are maybe working out, getting back into shape, getting that discipline for all things physical, for exercise in general. But this could even be related to, on the emotional level, can be anything that you want to change about yourself, how you relate to others. The first house can be, especially the ascendant, is connected to other people's opinions of you when they first meet you. First impressions is the way that they put it. And if you are, especially if you have the kind of business where you have a lot of first impressions. So somebody in sales where it's like your very sale is predicated on how you come across to somebody. You may never see them again, but you're making that impression on them, and that can be the difference between gaining a new client and losing one. So, so these kinds of things can have an effect where a person feels like they are trying to work on something that they haven't quite finished, that they see that there is still more to do. I remember back when Saturn went into Sagittarius, which is my sun sign, and it was right around the time, right before I started doing these readings. And I heard an astrologer saying, this is a great time for laying down foundations. And it all worked out that I knew this was going to be the time that I would do this. And now that Saturn has left Sagittarius, I have this to show for it. So there may be something that you have already done while Saturn has been in your sign, Capricorn. That is, you know what it is too? It's not just doing something like, getting a new job or something. This is something that has a personal mark on it, because the first house is the self, and the self is unique. Nobody can be another person. So it's really about making your mark as an individual on the world. Whether this is your sun sign in your solar first house or your natal first house. And it's just about a little bit more work that needs to be done for the last 5 months of the year. And Jupiter is in that house, so you're getting opportunities. Jupiter is retrograde, I think until, is it August? But even so, Jupiter can be this sense of you being able to expand your territory and that sort of thing. So it's Jupiter being retrograde might be situations that you can take advantage of that passed you by the first time. So Mercury does go direct on the 12th, but before that, we have a lunar eclipse at 5 degrees of Capricorn, and this is going to be either in your first house of the self or the 12th house. And in some ways, I really link these two houses in terms of personal transformation of a transit, like versus if the eclipse was in the second house of earned income. I mean, that might affect your finances, but not really you. And the 12th house is you as a spiritual being, but all the past yous, the yous in past lives. And the lunar eclipse can help you to break those karmic bonds that have kind of kept you in this bondage that you may not even be aware of. And really, to me, it's not even that mystical to talk about this bondage. I really feel that it's nothing more than spiritual, emotional baggage from other lifetimes. Just like if you had certain things happen when you were a kid, and these themes are playing out as an adult, even if it was 50 years ago, it might as well be another lifetime. Well, the same thing applies to other lifetimes. So you can say, wow, that's so trippy, but really it's just kind of a similar situation. And because these things are either repressed memories, that can be the 12th house, that were traumatic, or if they were things that connected to just the fact that we don't often remember past lives, and yet we have those samskaras. We have those habits that form that shoot us in the foot. The 12th house is the house of self-undoing. So if you're born after the, from the 14-degree mark onwards, this is actually going to happen in your 12th house. And so that can be like transformative at an internal level. With it happening in your first house, there may be like a very conscious knowing of exactly of what you're getting rid of within yourself, maybe even like physical things that you're going to change. Are you going to lose weight? Things like that. And the other thing too is that this can be some kind of spiritual download about things that you need to change. However, it's going to be a conscious thing. It's something that you need to like deal with. And there's no debate on that. Even if it's difficult, even if you feel like you don't want to do it, you still are going to do it. And that, I think is really great. So just be ready for that, because this can also involve another person. The lunar eclipse is a powerful full moon, and that means that the sun is opposing at the exact same degree in the opposite house, in the opposite sign. So it's in Cancer for many of you. For some of you, this is going to be the 6th house, where the sun is opposing from. And this would be more about maybe your spiritual direction versus your, maybe like your dharma. The 6th house is the house of your service to others. And sometimes that gets convoluted because we are trying to be something we're not, trying to put too much emphasis on the material, trying to please others instead of realizing that that isn't going to lead to us feeling fulfilled in life. And that may come across. The 12th house is like, past lives. What did you come here to be? Life is temporary. This incarnation is temporary. So just keeping that in mind as you navigate through life, and not allowing yourself to get sidetracked by anything that wants to keep you down. Okay, so Mars is in Aries all month, and this is your 4th house of home and family. Mars has been in the 3rd house when it was in Pisces in June and before then. So if you have been fighting with siblings, and if this has something to do with a will, and that may have been something that occurred earlier this year, maybe in February or so, where you found out about something related to that. Now this is the 4th house, so this could be the mother, and so there could be more, I wouldn't even say tension, it could be outright war. And usually Cancers do not want to fight with family. Capricorns don't want to fight with family. So this would not be something that you would look forward to. But it might be necessary to, demand answers in certain cases. If there's something that was kept from you, and if, for instance, we're talking about a will, and it happened to come out certain things, that can certainly cause a lot of ire. And even if it's something that is not very pleasant, sometimes it is what it is. But it could be something completely different. It could be that you're putting an addition onto your home, or doing a lot of construction work. Mars can be something very physical, very, active, that is occurring with your real estate, your property. And that's going to be all month. On the 20th, we have a black moon at 28 degrees of Cancer, and that's falling in that 7th house of relationships. A black moon is the second new moon in a month, just like a blue moon is the second full moon in the month. And from what I read, because I wanted to get it straight if it had to be in the same sign, and they said, yes, it's in the same sign. And it's marked by the first one being at an early degree of that sign. So we do have that that solar eclipse on June 21st at 0 degrees of Cancer. And I'm saying do in the future because it hasn't happened yet. And so that was at 0 degrees, and that's a new moon, but powerful one. And now we have a late degree black moon, and this is not a solar eclipse. This is just I put that in air quotes, a new moon, but a very potent one, being in one of the final degrees of the sign, and only occurring, black moons only occur about every 2.5 years. So it starts a new cycle, okay? And so just think about that, because that could indicate something that you start now that is connected to relationships that could have a long-lasting impact. Now, if you're already with somebody, perhaps this is a great time to get married. Who knows? Maybe that Mercury retrograde is wedding plans falling through and trying to figure out what you're going to do. Well, maybe you just need to hire somebody and go to a park and do this thing, I think I'm not married to my partner, and we've been together for decades, so I'm probably the last one who should be discussing marriage. But I will say that I love the idea of doing something that is very simple and very wholesome, because I feel like it's more sincere than big shindigs. And that's not to criticize any of you that have had big weddings or plan to have them. I don't want to give that impression. But I remember reading about this couple that had been married. They were celebrating their 70th wedding anniversary, I think it was. Something like that. I mean, major wedding anniversary. So these people were in their 90s. And they had gotten married, I think it was during World War II. And because of rations, because there were a lot of restrictions with things, including just money itself, they had a very simple wedding, maybe like in a church basement type of a thing. And they served, they had a homemade cake and sandwiches. I don't know what it was. And they just went downtown to a hotel and stayed overnight or something like that. And I thought that was the most romantic thing I could ever think of. So, but anyway, that's happening. And then on the 22nd, the sun goes into Leo, and that is the 8th house. And then the sun goes from this romantic area of committed partnership to this very intense, water house that Scorpio rules. And that can be digging deep into life, the meaning of life. To me, it's a form of being philosophical, but more, the occultist, the metaphysician. So, in any case, I have been saying that this is a mellow month for us, where we don't have as many transits happening, but for Capricorn, it certainly is very eventful. I hope that you enjoyed this. If you'd like a personal reading, the link is below. Thank you for listening. Take care. Bye.